Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Som TV podcast. My name is Jason Wise, and on today's episode, I am honored, privileged, and excited to introduce Jonah Beer for another wine and movie cameos. Jonah, how excited are you today?
I couldn't be more excited. This is definitely. I know that didn't sound very excited, but the truth is that I always look forward to these, and when I get a text from you that says, "Are you ready for another one?" I've already got my list going of things I've seen, and it's been great. So I'm ready for it, buddy.
It really has started driving my wife crazy that I always am like, wait, hold on, pause it. When did that happen? And we're watching some movie, and I'm like, this.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, this is a show where we call out wine that makes a prominent appearance or an important appearance or just a strange cameo in a TV show or a movie. So we are going to we've each picked two. We're going to do that. Before, Jonah, you and I open some wine and get into a pretty loose conversation, at somtv.com, we have a whole bunch of new stuff. We have a new series called The History of Food. It is live right now with a bunch of episodes. It's great. We also have, for free, whether you're a member or not, you can watch our original film, Inheriting the Future, about the future of Bourgogne, the next generation that's taking over arguably the most important wine region in the world. And then also a look at a bunch of great Napa winemakers talking about the 2024 vintage and what it's going to be like. So the vintage report is live, and you can watch that whether you're a subscriber or not. Remember, we have films like our Judgment of Paris series and Life of Wine and other things on the way. So please go to somtv.com and subscribe. And obviously, you can see Jonah all over Som TV. So another wine cameo show. Do you find it hard to keep picking these? Because for me, I don't. I keep finding more and more and more and wanting to do more of these episodes. So I'm curious, before we get into our picks.
I think I have probably 5 or 6 still like in the queue in finding more. So no, I don't find it difficult. I just find it interesting because I think that I'm like you, I'm often looking for if I can spot it. Like I love it when it's not prominent. Like, like in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which we talked about, where the Clos de Vol was in the lens the whole time. I like it when it's kind of like you kind of have to spot it. You can't quite tell if it was how well thought out it was. And then if it is, all the better. So I love it. I can't get enough. And speaking of, by the way, it is, I'm popping a bottle of, speaking of, let's get into some Clos de Vol Merlot 2011.
You really got to love a job that forces you to drink at 11:30 a.m. I'm drinking some Thiasin Cab right now. That's what I'm drinking. You'd think they sponsor us, considering how much I talk about Steve and Jill's wine.
Yeah.
They don't.
I'm actually shocked
like their
that
wine.
they're not.
I adore
Steve
them.
and Jill, let's get on that. Let's get on that.
Yeah, let's get on that. All right, so we've got our wine. We've got our movies lined up. So I picked 2 films. You picked 2 television shows, if I am correct.
I did.
These are always fun because we date ourselves, our age, and all of this stuff by the things that we pick. But I will say, spoilers for a future episode, I was watching that show, The Penguin, on Max.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too.
Which, by the way, is really good. And there's a lot of wine in it. A lot of Italian wine for the Falcones. So if you've watched that show, that may be a future pick, spoiler one. I'm not picking it right now, but to be, my picks may not be the most recent films for this one, but I will say that that might be coming in the future. I'm just saying. A lot of Barolo.
Hey, listen, I'm kind of happy with the picks I've made because I think one of them in particular is going to be great for anyone that's looking for a series to kind of binge on over the Christmas holiday. You're trying to avoid the family. You can sneak off to the den and put something on and just sink into it. So I think one of my picks is going to be good because it'll be a great opportunity for someone that's looking for a binge-worthy show for the holidays.
Awesome.
And I think you know which one I'm talking about.
Emily in Paris, right?
Of course. How could it be anything but?
All right, well,
Selling Sunset.
Selling Sunset. Why don't we take my first pick here, which is a film.
Yeah, let's do it.
I happen to love this movie very much, or I wouldn't have picked it. It is the eponymous 1996 Best Picture winner, The English Patient. This is a film that it's hard to overstate the phenomenon that this movie was. It is an incredibly long film. It was a film that a lot of people complained was too long. It is a film set in World War II with English soldier who may be playing both sides, falls in love with another guy's wife. And it's an epic story. They just do not make films like this. A lot of it's told in flashbacks by an injured man who's gotten burns in a plane crash. And it's just gorgeous. I mean, it kind of goes back to like Lawrence of Arabia time that you have this kind of scope on the screen. I love this movie. It is incredibly made by the late Anthony Minghella. who also did Talented Mr. Ripley and Cold Mountain and all of these great larger-than-life epic films. He sadly died before he got to make many more films. I mean, he is a genius. So in this film, if you have seen The English Patient, you don't think of it for wine, but there is a really important scene. And it's right when Ralph Fiennes, who is the quote-unquote English patient, meets Colin Firth, who is a soldier or working for the British government in the Middle East. And Kristen Scott Thomas, who is about as hot as you can be in this film, is the wife of Colin Firth. And so when Ralph Fiennes meets her, which is the whole impetus to this whole film going off the rails, an affair between an officer's wife and this guy, they have a bottle of Mumm champagne that gets pulled out of a biplane, and they open it to celebrate, and they're drinking it, and it's the real deal old Mumm champagne that would have existed during the 40s. So they got that right. And then about 4 minutes later, at about 27 minutes in the film, they play, quote unquote, spin the bottle. But instead of there being kissing at the end of this bottle spin, or whatever you do when you play spin the bottle, they all have to sing in front of each other. But the reason this is very important is not only does it get a ton of shots directly at the Mumm champagne, but it also is kind of the moment where the characters are falling in love with each other, where everything goes to shit in the movie. You know, everything starts going to shit after this moment is because he's falling in love with this guy's wife. And once again, proving that alcohol and champagne is a very easy way to A, get yourself laid, and B, make a mess of your life. So that's what I would say.
It's a winner.
I've had this one on my list for quite a while because it's a movie that if you love these kind of films, this movie can't go wrong.
Now, listen, I'm excited you picked this film because I've never seen it. I have never seen a minute of The English Patient. And to be honest, I never have because I can't imagine if people are complaining that it's too long. I always feel like that tells me everything I need to know about the movie. Now, with your endorsement, this is going to be my holiday film watch. I'm going to watch The English Patient for the first time. But I always thought it was just I thought it was overly sappy. And is it not?
For me, no. I think that this movie is really good. I mean, there is a certain heightened reality that Margaux films do, and if you've seen Talented Mr. Ripley, you know what this is. It's everyone's dripping sex, and everyone could fight at any moment, and everyone has a secret, and everyone's got a melancholy sadness to them. So sappy, maybe. But there is a scene there are scenes in this movie that are mind-boggling, especially with this old biplane flying through, and I think they filmed it in Jordan, and it's just traveling through these canyons. Again, very, very much like Lawrence of Arabia. I think that if you're looking for a war film, you'll find a war film. If you're looking for a romance, you'll find a romance. If you're looking for an epic, you'll find an epic. To me, I think this is one of the great, I don't know if you can call it an American film. It's probably a British film, but one of the great World War II films that isn't directly combat related. I love this movie. I really do. It's 162 minutes long, but I don't complain. I mean, people are like, movies are too long. And I'm like, wait, you're mad that Martin Scorsese's movie is too long? You want less? You want less of Martin Scorsese's movie? I mean, I just, and I'm the kind of guy, just to get on a soapbox here, I'm the kind of guy that thinks 99% of series should be a movie anyway. They stretched out way too long. Whereas The English Patient, it's based on a book. So they try to put a lot in. I don't know. I believe that this movie, you shouldn't take anything out of it. Everybody's gorgeous. Juliette Binoche is incredible. And it's a great movie. It's really great.
The cast is pretty outstanding. And if it's not melodramatic, I feel that it's going to be the watch.
The cover I'm showing you right now is a little dramatic.
Exactly.
Not gonna lie. That's the Blu-ray. Yeah. Oh, that's the Blu-ray. But I want to start it off, with a nice World War II epic.
I know. Do you think that Mumm was appropriately cast?
Yes. I would say that it might look cliche now, but I do think back then, it's not like there were grower champagnes. It's not like, at least none that would have gone anywhere. And
right, exactly.
What would it have been? It would have been probably, I think back in the 40s, you would have had Charles Heidsieck, you would have had Pomeroy, you would have had Mumm, you would have had Veuve Clicquot, you would have had, and I think Mumm was a pretty accessible bottle. So if you got a guy who's I make maps for the British Army, or I'm a scout or whatever, and you want a bottle of champagne, it makes total sense. They got the right bottle. It is the period bottle which is incredible. And so, I mean, I would give them an A on this because I don't know what else. I mean, my only complaint would be, can a bottle of champagne survive taking a biplane ride through the Middle Eastern desert and probably trains and boats and all that stuff? I mean, that would have been a pretty tough bottle to drink when they got it. But if you're sitting in Jordan, you're going to be happy about anything, I think. So
no, I think that it's appropriately cast just from the standpoint of, yes, I can imagine the quartermaster can get his hands on a case of that and make sure that, it's available. The bumpy plane ride, as you described, might make for an exciting moment when you open said champagne, but it sounds right. It sounds right. And the fact that they got the label correct in the screenshot I saw, that's impressive. Nicely done.
Yeah, I'm going with an A. I recommend this movie very strongly, and your girlfriend or wife probably has already seen it. So,
first of all, good pick. I am looking forward to watching it this holiday. Now, I'm going to pivot to one. My first pick is actually someone that would not recommend The English Patient, and quite famously so. In fact, good. There's a whole episode of this show based on how one of the four main characters does not want to go see The English Patient. And so I'm talking about Seinfeld, and I am talking specifically. I know. Listen. I'm telling you, you can say what you want and think what you want. There's so much about it, but this is an episode called The Rye, and it was when George and his fiance his parents are going over to the in-laws, or soon-to-be in-laws, for dinner. They try to get a Schnitzer's Marble Rye. Some old lady gets the last one. Jerry has to steal it. And hilarity ensues. Elaine is famously not wanting to go watch The English Patient because it looks too long and boring, and she wants to go see a movie called Sack Lunch. And to get back to the scene. Okay, so you've got Costanzas. They are in the dining room of their soon-to-be in-laws, the Rosses. The Rosses are of course, kind of the famous, the almost prototypical New York wealthy Upper East Side family. She's always drunk. They're always fighting about something. And they got the in-laws together. There's a great scene where Jerry Stiller tries to understand what a Cornish game hen is, because they're having Cornish game hen, and he can't understand if you have a chicken and a rooster and a hen, and the rooster has sex with the hen who's having sex with the chicken, and a whole argument ensues. And there's a bottle of wine on the center of the table, and every time the tension gets more cringeworthy, someone at the dinner grabs the bottle and pours themselves like another heaping amount of this wine. And the wine is 1996 Benziger Merlot.
Amazing.
I cannot fathom a better casting bottle of wine than Benziger Merlot in 1996. It was just about the perfect time for when Merlot, of course, Kramer famously loves Merlot. He lives for Merlot. There's a discussion about Merlot at the dinner table. The wine was kind of a little bit of a hit, like it was popular, it had size and scale, it was certainly available in New York, and you can just see this couple buying a case of Benziger Merlot to have with their Cornish game hen and just in this cringy, awful in-laws dinner. So Seinfeld, The Rye. I'm telling you, it's such
a good pick. I love, you're so obscure. I love that you're like episode 163 of, and by the way, I love Seinfeld. Right. Every once in a while, I'll just be like doing a task and I'll laugh about the episode where they get in trouble for kissing during Schindler's List. And like, everyone's like, you can't make out during Schindler's List. And he's like, right. I didn't know, and they're like, you're Jewish. That's terrible. And he's like, that show is absolutely the best. Kenny Rogers Roasters. Yeah. We could do a whole podcast on this damn show. What a great pick.
It's season 7, episode 11, in case you're looking to find it on your streaming apparatus. But listen, the other thing is that, movies play a big part of like Seinfeld's culture. Like they're going to a movie. What movie are they going to see? Like movies are a big part of kind of, and I think it's so true to the New York lifestyle that they would be living and those characters. Yep. And so I just love the fact that they pulled no punches on The English Patient, and they went and got themselves a little Benziger Merlot.
Benziger Merlot. So you're going, you're giving them a good high rating on that, right?
It's an A+ casting rating in my book. I can't fathom a better. Ravenswood, like Zinfandel, may have been like another A+ casting, but for this one,
Do you know I have a
for when this
bottle of
aired,
old Ravenswood Zinfandel sitting right now on my shelf that somebody had in their cellar, and by cellar I mean like a closet, and they were like, "You want any of this crap?" And I was like, "I'll take it." So I have an old bottle of Ravenswood Zinfandel, like literally right now in my house. I don't know.
Well, save it. We're drinking it together.
Okay.
Anyway, Schnitzer's Marble Rye and Benziger Merlot. I'm picking that as a winner, and I think it's a nice tie-in to The English Patient.
That's great. I love it. It is unfortunate that that Elaine does not want to watch The English Patient because it is too long. Okay, my third pick. This is a movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of a one for me here. I don't know why more people do not talk about this film. I don't know why more people hadn't seen it. I know it was nominated for a couple Oscars, so it's not like it's a film that's not known. I have chosen Steve Jobs, the Aaron Sorkin written film that is, I love this film so much. It is directed by Danny Boyle, who did 28 Days Later and a number of other, Slumdog Millionaire, Oscar winner in his own right. This movie is a very unconventional telling of the life of Steve Jobs through 3 product unveilments. They have those big events where they unveil a new thing, the iMac, the next computer, and so they tell it that way. And he's got this illegitimate daughter that focuses as the main foil to him, whether it's his daughter, should he be supporting amongst all the stress and all this stuff. This movie, if you know Sorkin and you like The American President, or you like A Few Good Men, or you like anything that Sorkin has done, it is just people yelling at each other for 2 hours. And it is such an incredibly hilarious, great combative film. And there is a wine cameo in this movie that has been sitting at my upper echelon of the great wine cameos in all movies of all time. And it is when Jeff Daniels, who plays the original CEO of Apple, when the Apple II came out, and having to deal with Steve Jobs as this megomaniacal egomaniac who is a genius and who just will not bend to anyone. And he has to make the board comfortable. So when they're launching their new computer, Jeff Daniels is backstage and they have they're counting down. There's all these technical problems. They have 5 minutes before the show. They have 3 minutes before the show. They have 1 minute before the show. And Jeff Daniels, who's the CEO, comes back and he says,
"Because I hear you've been worse than usual this morning. I didn't think that was possible. So I've been dispatched as the Steve Whisperer. This is a 55 Margaux.
9 in the morning.
This is a 55 Margaux."
Let me repeat myself. This is a 1955 Chateau Margaux. And he's holding the bottle, and he is so Silicon Valley. I want this rich person that we all know who is very important, and they know their wine, and they're going to use it to tell you that I know how fucking important what you're doing is, because I'm going to open this bottle and I'm going to suck the power out of the room by saying, you need to understand that this wine is so good that I'm using it to celebrate you, but it's really about me. And it's an amazing device in this film where he does this. And so they go on to do this event, and then all hell breaks loose. And of course, there's a giant failed release of different computers. The next computer is a failure. And he runs back into Jeff Daniels, who has since been fired by the board. And since Apple is in the worst place they've ever been, and all of these problems are happening, and Steve Jobs is trying to launch this other computer with a tactic that you have to see the movie to understand. And Steve Jobs throws this line out when he's like, "I'm not the one that fired you." Jeff Daniels says, "I didn't fire. Why do you think I fired you? Who makes you think?" And they go to all these flashbacks and this giant, amazing confrontational scene. And it basically ends with Steve Jobs saying, "Oh, do you have a fucking 1955 Margaux you'd like to open now?" And it is such a slap in his face about using this wine back at him. And it's so great. Wow. And I have to be honest, if you're the guy who was the CEO of Apple and you live in some house that is got to be so huge and you have fast money, a 1955 Margaux is the right wine. It is the perfect wine. It is exactly, because it's just enough that the audience might go, I either know what that is or I believe that it's important. And 1955 must be important. And that, as we know, was a very good year in Bordeaux. So that's my pick for wine number 2. This is a movie that I watch probably every 4 months, just because the confrontational nature of Aaron Sorkin's dialogue and the insanely frenetic directing that Danny Boyle does in this film, it's like nothing else. It's like almost like real time, you know? And I just watched Saturday Night, the new film from Jason Reitman about the Saturday Night Live. We watched it last night. It's great. It's great. And it's the first film I've seen since Steve Jobs that reminds me of this, like, we're backstage, product launch, events about to happen. In this case, it's the first episode of Saturday Night Live. And it's just everyone coming at each other the whole time, and everything that could go wrong could. So they're kind of like sister films for me. There's a lot of cocaine in that film, no wine. But when we do cocaine cameos, we'll do that one.
Also perfect casting for Saturday Night Live in the 1972 or whatever it was, right? Like, you know. Well, number one, I love this film. And I think that everything Aaron Sorkin's done is almost just as good as it gets. And he does have a penchant for loving to give us this backstage look at things. The West Wing, Sports Night,
I love Sports
Studio
Night.
60, like all these different shows he's done and different things. He's so good at peeling back the curtain a little bit. And he writes dialogue that is so fast and so precise, and everyone is so erudite that it's almost it's almost too good. Like at times you go, man, there's no way people talk like that. You know, like,
well, you mean people aren't like, did you order the code red?
No,
I want the truth.
About, like,
you can't handle the truth. I mean, it's like,
no, I'm talking more like in the West Wing, like when those, like, you know, they're like Rob Lowe and they're all like walking through the hallway and it's rapid fire stuff. So I think he does brilliant dialogue. And it's actually this film that made me really dislike Steve Jobs a lot. I came out of it actually
it's
on
not
the
a
other
film
side. No. I was always on the fence, and to this day I don't own any Apple products. Like, it's really, this movie pushed me over the edge, man. It really did make me kind of go like, I just don't like this person. And I love I can't remember who played his daughter, but at the end, like when she's having that fight, it's different
actresses. It's different actresses through different time periods. I believe it's three different
at
girls.
The very end, it's the oldest one, and she's yelling at him about, like, you know, it's think differently, not think different, and that doesn't make you an iconoclast. It just makes you bad at grammar. Like, there is so much that I love about that character and her, because she's saying all the stuff. I think it's just great. It's great. And by the way, I agree. Jeff Daniels, great cast, but the 55 Margaux is brilliant, because I remember the scene where he can't understand why the iPod. He was making some little handheld computer like an iPad, but he had a stylus, and he asked Steve Jobs, "How did you know it wasn't going to work?" And he said, "Because the stylus." And he said, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you have 5 on your hand already." And you just watch Jeff Daniels like break, like you see him break, like his soul breaks, like he knows he's not that good. He's not as good as he'd built himself up to in his own head. And I think it's great bottle. Absolutely, the Jeff Daniels CEO character would have absolutely had that in his cellar and be so proud about bringing it out, and, you know, and not getting the accolades for it, not getting the oh my god that kills him.
Yeah, it's
great
so
casting.
good. It's so good, and it's so it's just guys putting their dick on the table one after another in this film. Like, you know, it's just mine's bigger, mine's this, mine's that, and the whole thing is like that's just another version of that. But there is a scene, the second confrontation, and I know we're off the rails here, but I do love to talk about movies. There's a scene with the second one where he comes up and says, "Why do you think I fired you?" And it is a literal 12-minute piece of music by Daniel Pemberton, who's a composer. 12-minute piece of music, and the entire fight flashback argument is framed completely within this 12-minute orchestral piece of music that is so intense and so fast. And it's like its own short film within the movie where you have to watch these two spar over the course of 2 decades. And you see, it's tough. I'm not sure that I took this Michael Fassbender's Steve Jobs. It's hyper real. So I don't know that I totally buy that Steve Jobs was this guy. Was he a selfish monster by certain accounts? Yes. But was he a genius? Yes. I'm not sure. Like, I never knew him. I know people who did know him very well. Yeah. And their response was that he was very smart and they respected him enormously, but they treaded softly, I think is basically
right.
So you have the last pick. And of course, amazingly, all of our things matrix together. So your last pick
I know.
perfectly.
And dear listener, Jason's mom, I will tell you, we don't talk about this in advance. Like we come up with our picks, and then it's only right before we start recording do we know what each other's done. So this was not a setup. I chose the television show, The Newsroom by Aaron Sorkin.
Amazing.
And it's
with Jeff Daniels, starring Jeff Daniels.
Exactly.
By the same guy.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly. It is 3 seasons. And again, I feel like this is the one I was talking about. Like if you're coming up on the holidays, you need a binge-worthy show, 3 seasons of The Newsroom, and you're going to just go, okay, it's great. You can sink into it. You can get through it over the holidays. It's great. It's a take on, for anyone that hasn't seen it, it's a take on a behind-the-scenes look at a CNN-type newsroom starring a single anchor who's kind of the star of the whole network, named Will McAvoy, played by Jeff Daniels, slightly based on like a Keith Olbermann character. When Keith Olbermann left ESPN to go to MSNBC and became kind of more political, Jeff Daniels plays this guy, and it's just about like the characters in it and around it, and it's Aaron Sorkin, so the dialogue comes very fast. It is no holds barred, no punches pulled. It just comes at you like really quickly. But it's deep ensemble cast. So you've got this associate producer named Jim, and Jim wants to date a girl that he works with named Maggie. And look, Maggie's already in a relationship with someone else, so she sets him up with her roommate, Lisa. Well, this leads to all the kind of intertwined relationships you'd expect in a Sorkin series. But there's a scene where Maggie and Jim have to go convince Lisa, the girlfriend and roommate, to appear on their show to do kind of a salacious interview about a character named Casey Anthony, who's, it's just like bad news, but they have to do it. And she was this girl's roommate. So they find her at her high-end boutique dress shop in the Village in New York. And they go in to confront her, to ask her to do this interview. And she's with a customer, like a wealthy New York socialite who's trying on like 40 dresses. And of course, Lisa's paid on commission, so she's trying to give this woman her attention. They keep interrupting her. And at one point, to get the socialite to just give her 5 minutes, she says, "How about a little bit of wine?" And the socialite says, "Of course." And she reaches into a bucket of ice and pulls out an open bottle of cake bread Chardonnay. I mean, and it's labeled to camera, and it's a 9-ounce pour. It's like a Rutherford Grill style Hillstone pour. And she hands her the wine. And the woman is just like so thrilled with the wine that she forgets that she's there to buy. It's just, and it buys them the time to carry on the dialogue and carry on the scene. And there's something about it, like the effortlessness about, well, one, the way that the boutique had the wine set, like it was just there. Like they know that there's going to be a point when a customer's going to get gripey and they need to appease them. And cake bread Chardonnay is going to do it every time. And it works, and it keeps the scene going, and it keeps the drama alive. And they do convince her to do the interview, by the way, but no spoilers beyond that. I will say I saw that, and I immediately paused it and got yelled at by my wife because she's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got to write this down. I got to write down what season, what episode, where they're at." Because I thought Cake Bread Chardonnay was perfect casting. Can you imagine going into a boutique and seeing? Of course you can. Like, do you agree, Jason? Do you agree?
Yes, I do. No, it works. My only little nit would be that in the East Coast of New York City, would it be a California wine? Would it not be potentially a French wine? But you know what? You're right. It would be. And cake bread's perfect. I mean, what would have been wrong is Rombauer. If they had Rombauer, it would have been wrong.
Yes,
for me.
Exactly. See, that would have been lazy casting. That's central casting bullshit and does not belong here.
Yeah.
This took a wine casting director that thought it through just a little bit and said, "No, we're going to do something else." Now, Veuve Clicquot would have been a nice stand-in, but
sure.
I think.
But champagne doesn't hold. Sure. If you have something that could be 2 days old, or it could be like whenever.
Exactly.
Champagne's not going to hold.
And there was only one customer in the shop, so it's not like they're turning out buckets of this stuff, So
right.
Anyway, I loved it. I loved that scene. I loved the fact that it was cake bread Chardonnay, and Aaron Sorkin just writes the best stuff. It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, I think if you're at like a boutique, or you're like a Gucci store or something like that, they'd open a split of champagne for you. But if you're at this place and they're opening, this is a good call. This is a really good call. Cake Bread is legendary in its like for this type of person, wineness.
That's so much so much so.
I gotta say, this is just I'm going to call myself out as an idiot here. But when Cake Bread died, the founder of that winery who died not too long ago, and I found out his real last name was Cake Bread. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought that was just like some like marketing, like they were just like bread and butter Chardonnay. I couldn't believe it. Cake Bread was the guy's real name. I want to know, like, going through Ellis Island or whatever the hell, how'd you get Cake Bread as your last name? What the hell is that shit? It's unbelievable. It's great.
It was probably pane dolce or something like that. And, and then that's sweet bread. That's cake bread. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
Exactly. Somebody was like, all right, next.
I had the same
stamping passports.
I had the same experience. This would have been 25 years ago. I was working for Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. And I went to a Napa Valley Vintners event. Like I was on the export committee. And it was Margaret Duckhorn, which I think is another great last name, Duckhorn.
So good. So good.
It was Margaret Duckhorn and Karen Cake Bread and me, and we were meeting at Cake Bread to talk. And we went into the barrel room to look at something. And I noticed that they had all their barrels were wrapped in plastic, but they were already stacked on racks, like stacked up really high. And at some point, Bruce Cake Bread comes walking through. And I get introduced and I said, hey, let me ask you a question. Why are your barrels wrapped in plastic? And he's like, oh, that helps to reduce the evaporation because, there's something called the angel share where wine evaporates out of the barrel. And if you wrap it in plastic wrap, it's going to help keep that in. And I was like, no shit, that's amazing. And he's like, no, you idiot. They're just brand new. Like they just arrived. And so,
I was going to say, I don't think that's true.
No, it's not true at all. Like, I mean,
you wouldn't want to do that anyway. You might as well just put it in some other vessel if you're going to cut the air out.
Now, listen, it's 24 years later, and every time I see Karen Cake Bread, she's still like, "Hey, idiot, we don't wrap our barrels in plastic wrap." So it was a learning moment for old Jonah over there at Cake Bread.
That's really good. I like that.
Anyway. Great people, great stuff, and perfect casting.
Have
you seen the Newsroom? Have you seen the Newsroom?
Oh yeah, I watched every episode. I mean, I think the episode where they get Osama bin Laden is just like one of the most amazing. It's so crazy how well structured that episode is. It is amazing.
Yeah. Who carries that episode is Sam Waterston. He drives that episode, and he is
what a cast.
You just realize what an actor that guy was, just fabulous, just great.
What a cast,
just great.
Well,
Olivia,
we're gonna do one
anyway.
Yeah, everyone's in it. We're gonna do one more of these before the end of the year. We want to do a Christmas themed one, and the reason is I'm not a big Christmas guy, but there's a lot of Christmas. Well, actually, I love Christmas. I have kids. That's not what I mean. I more mean that doing Christmas themed episodes and such is fine, but there's a lot of great Christmas movies and people are always drinking in Christmas movies. And so you and I, if you're listening and you've made it this far,
oh man, if you did, hi mom.
Yeah. Hi mom. Hit us up on social media, especially the Som TV Instagram account. Hit us up with a direct message. What Christmas movies you'd like to hear us talk about with wine cameos that are in there. I mean, if we were to expand to alcohol and beverages and stuff, this would be endless. But we're trying to find stuff that might make you also be like, all right, I want to go watch that thing because I might not have heard of it. We're not trying to make this everyone's seen. I watched Oppenheimer 2 days ago because I was like, there's got to be wine in here. Wine has got to be in here. And there is, but it's not very interesting. It's really just the alcoholic wife. It's constantly drinking. And I'm not sure that that's the best way to do that, So anyways, if you have any Christmas ones, obviously the classics are on our radar, but if there's anything, especially if there's something hilarious you'd like Jonah to have to watch, some terrible Lifetime Christmas movie or something where there's wine in it.
If you've got some Hallmarks, listen, I will get down on some Hallmark Christmas movies, right? As long as there's not any sort of I don't like the ones where like there was one called like a Mary Shoe Christmas or something where she put on a pair of shoes and now she's a time traveler. I don't like anything like that. But if you give me a good solid, you know,
What do you mean?
city
Like,
girl
like that's
leaves-
a genre? Like,
it is. Oh
there
no!
is-
Listen,
there's-
you've got to catch up on your Hallmark Christmas movies. There's
No, I
the
don't.
ultra religious ones. There's the like ones where there's a magical power, and then there's one
Uh-huh.
where it's always a big city girl goes back to small town,
Oh,
falls in
yeah,
love with
yeah,
small
for sure.
town guy, has to choose between New York and fill in the state. Those are pretty good. I'll watch those.
My wife the other day, I can't believe anyone's still here, just watched one of the Christmas ones where some woman falls in love with a snowman. I forget what it's called, but she apparently said it's like
Frosty.
the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said it's like so bad and she loved it. She watched
Yeah,
it with like all
it's-
the neighbors and like, I just
Yeah.
can't even.
I think it's like the cocaine bear of Hallmark movies. Like you're just like, I can't believe they did it, but here it is.
Everyone, thank you for listening to what, of course, was going to turn into a disaster at the end of the podcast. I would love to thank you, Jonah, for joining us.
Hey, absolutely.
And I would love to thank John Adams, our producer. Seriously, go to Som TV. We will have this episode to watch in the near future. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And if you are a subscriber or not, you can watch Inheriting the Future and the Napa Valley Vintage Report for free. And if you are a subscriber, you can watch a lot more stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of hours, including the history of food, which is now streaming. Let's get our wines in for Christmas. And let's try to be nice to our family through this stretch. All right? Everybody behave yourselves.